Hi, welcome to week 2 of the Master of Arts in Ministry program seminar. Uh, Glad to be on to the second week and still a lot of work to do, but very similar to the first week, just a different topic. We worked with the first skill we want you to have in graduate studies, which is a biblical worldview in the first week. Now in this second week, the second module, we're going to work on critical thinking. First, just a bit of housekeeping. You may notice the yellow bar up here. That means that I have my Blackboard in student preview mode. That is, what I show you should look like what you see. I didn't do that last week, and so some of the things I showed you didn't look the same as they will look to you. Hopefully I've corrected that this time. So let's look at Module 2. And please read every word of every module, but I'm going to skim by the introduction. And let's look at the learning outcomes. As a result of this week's module, you should be able to identify the foundations of critical thinking skills. Last week we talked about foundations of biblical worldview. This week, foundations of critical thinking skills. Evaluate how culture addresses the place of critical thinking. We need to be engaged in a big discussion with beyond the borders of the church, with our culture, and we need to be able to use critical thinking to do that. We want to look at what the culture thinks of critical thinking, and it isn't just one thing. There's a lot of takes on it out there. And you need to reflect on the formation of your own critical thinking skills as you will be using them in this program. So you need to read some more of Morrow, chapters 10 through 16 in Think Christianly. There's a PowerPoint for you to view by Dr. Shane Johnson again. The PowerPoint's here in Lectures, Media, and Supplements. Let's take a look at the learning activities. So first one is critical thinking definition. Now this is a discussion. This is a good one to get into early in the week. You have to do a little bit of web searching and particularly use the Bultema Library because we want to get scholarly definitions of critical thinking. And there are multiple definitions out there. Get some of those and then discuss on this board, put some of the ones you found out there, and then discuss what's good, bad, or indifferent. And let's see if we can put together a class definition for critical thinking. You're not going to arrive at a single conclusion for the class, but we'll all shape each other's definition of critical thinking. So arrive at your own definition because you consulted with the class on that. And let's all get into that board early. That's an easy one to get into early. It doesn't take hours and hours of study. And hopefully we find different things and we can build each other's definitions up. Okay, the second thing is critical thinking Christianity. Now here's the thing. I kind of preview some of what you're going to do in your paper again this week. But there are some people in the world who think that Christianity is the opposite of critical thinking, that to be a Christian, you have to give up critical thinking. Well, I don't believe that. We don't believe that here at Grace. So this discussion is about how do we do critical thinking from a Christian perspective. And this is going to use your biblical worldview. Excuse me. But it's going to use other resources, some that you found in the search for the definition and others as noted here. But how can Christians be critical thinkers? And we want you to do that in your whole MA program. Then you have another cultural analysis paper. And again, this is very similar to last week, except you are searching now for what is out there on the internet, not specifically about critical thinking, but number one says, make a search of common thought on the internet regarding any number of issues that you deem morally critical in our culture today. Feel free to access newspaper, magazine articles, editorials, blogs. So these are not necessarily scholarly, but you want to find out what people are saying about an issue you find interesting or issues you find interesting that have a moral component. So the introductory text talks about the LGBTQ issues. Same-sex marriage is one of those. Gender identity is another. You could use the one that's kind of time-honored in our day as abortion. You can talk about other reproductive and biological issues like genetic manipulation or enhancement of human beings. The Me Too movement is a huge one right now, and sexual harassment and how people respond to that. So you find some editorials on those or blogs on those moral issues, and then the other questions here: what are the critical factors that are involved in these issues? Upon what does the average American base their position? Maybe we could say what do the people that you read base their position on? We can't generalize it to the average American. So we'll just say the editorials you read, what do they base that on? Then is there such a concept as objective truth today? Do they base their opinions on objective truth? And how do you know? And in what sense has truth become subjective in regard to these issues? After you've spent some time on that, put your thoughts into a 1,500 to 2,000 word essay answering the questions above or others like them, and be sure to use APA format. So what we're saying is, what kinds of critical thinking or what basis for critical thinking are being used out there, and you can respond to that from a Christian worldview and say, how will Christian critical thinking tackle these things? Then on to number 4, your weekly reflection, and do a good job on that. As I talked about last week, knowing that you know is important. You need to think about what you've learned and see if you can pack it up into a package you can use. All right, as I say every time, feel free to get in touch with me with questions. Several of you did. I got texts, I got phone calls on my cell phone, I got phone calls on my office phone, I got emails. I don't think there's any other way to get a hold of me because I'm not on any social media. Well, some of you are in Grand Rapids. You can walk in and see me. Let me know I can help you out, and have a great week.